Coming up on News Center 16 at 5:30.
In South Bend, a local school leader is throwing in the towel after 5 years as superintendent. News Center 16 Sean Gallagher shares what's next for Dr. Carol Schmidt.
But if we're also going to begin the healing process, the first step in that journey is my step, and I'm sorry.
Mayor Rahm Emanuel's apology isn't blowing over too well in the Windy City. A number of twists and turns as protesters in Chicago held a citywide walkout demanding he resign. Plus, today marks a historic event. President Obama, along with congressional leaders, celebrate the 150th anniversary of the 13th Amendment banning slavery.
From WNDU, your breaking news and weather authority. This is News Center 16 at 5:30.
Good evening, I'm Maureen McFadden. South Bend School Superintendent is calling it quits at the end of this school year after spending nearly 5 years at the helm. News Center 16 Sean Gallagher was there when Dr. Carol Schmidt spoke with the media today. And Sean, she's had quite a career in education.
Yeah, that's for sure. She may have only been in South Bend for the past 5 years, but she has over 40 years in the education field. And it's something of a family business for Dr. Schmidt. Both of her parents were teachers, and she even married a teacher, which is why coming to the decision to leave all of those years behind was a difficult one, but one that she's comfortable making.
I think being a teacher from the very beginning is very rewarding as you see kids grow.
Dr. Carol Schmidt became South Bend Schools superintendent in November of 2011, but has a long history as an educator dating back to 1968. So after more than 40 years in the business, she knows she's making the right decision.
In some cases, you get up in the morning and you know it's the right time. And it is difficult because I've established some pretty powerful relationships here, and you always hope that those will continue. I have to say, the school year's not over, and we still have work to do.
In her nearly 5 years as superintendent, Schmidt has helped create professional development for staff, expanded the Montessori Magnet program to 6th grade, and what she's most proud of, starting pre-K programs at 5 schools.
Early childhood education has an economic impact in a community, in developing a community over time.
And in her 4+ decades as an educator, she's impacted tens of thousands of lives, and to this day is reminded of that.
You hope that it matters, and I have personal evidence that it has. I had a woman come up to me at an event, and she said, "You were my 7th grade English teacher." And she said, "I never got to tell you what a difference you made in my life." Now that was in the late 1960s. If you've made a difference in a child's life that's positive, I think that matters.
And Dr. Schmidt isn't entirely sure about what's next for her. She wouldn't delve too deep into that, but she did mention she has done some adjunct teaching at colleges in both Michigan and Arizona, so really not something she can give up too easy.
Okay, so do we know at this point who might replace her?
Well, not at this point right now. The board will vote on accepting Schmidt's retirement at next week's meeting, and then they'll begin that process to figure out a timeline for hiring a new superintendent. But both Dr. Schmidt and the school board both agree the best thing to do is get the community input in hiring her successor.
Okay, thanks a lot, Sean. Well, School City of Mishawaka is raising pay for substitute teachers. Last night, the school board approved a new compensation plan. There are 3 tiers, so to speak, for substitute pay. Retired school city leaders will make $90 daily. Certified teachers earn $80 a day, while folks who aren't certified take home $75. Retired and certified teachers have a chance to receive a bonus if they work a certain amount of days in a semester.
This is always a weak spot in our education, and so there's been every effort made to make sure that we attract the best substitutes that we can.
Right now, subs make $70 a day regardless of their education level. The new plan goes into effect in January. The Cass County Parks Department is poised to receive its largest state grant ever. The news should create plenty of happy campers in the Michiana area. Mark Peterson is live in the studio. So Mark, what's in the works?
A $375,000 park improvement plan. It includes a couple of cabins for camping, which is unusual, at least at a county park.
What with a canoe and kayak launch, volleyball, hiking, picnicking, a day at Arthur Dodd Park along the Dowagiac River can't be beat, although there's a feeling the good times could be extended if the hours of operation were to do the same.
what a end to a perfect day is when you're canoeing down the Dowagiac River and you have a place to stay right on the river.
A place to stay that would look something like this. A state grant is poised to help pay to build 2 cabins at Arthur Dodd Park, offering park patrons overnight accommodations.
And we have the ability from our master plan to increase from 2 to up to 10. We're dipping our toe in, we're going to see how it works out, and then again we'll go on from there. But I have a good feeling about it.
After all, the park appears to be in the right place at the right time. Its popularity promises to rise if all the talk of tearing down the Pucker Street Dam downstream turns to action.
That'll allow large game fish to come all the way up through the Dowagiac River. And Dodd Park constitutes about 90% of the public land on the Dowagiac River. So lots of potential. We're just scratching the surface. And this grant will go a long ways to move that process along.
As for the numbers, the state grant, $277,000, that was approved by the Natural Resources Trust Fund, and that was a huge step, though the legislature still has to give final approval. That's pretty much seen as a formality. The rest of the money is going to have to come from the county. It's a 75-25 match.
Okay, very good. So aside from the cabins, what kind of improvements are planned?
I guess the biggest one, a brand new canoe and kayak launch and a new footbridge. Right now, the kayak launch is about 100 yards from the parking lot, from the road. This would cut that distance in half, leaves you a little bit more energy in your arms for paddling.
Yeah, exactly.
You don't have to carry it.
Okay, Mark, thanks a lot.
Thanks.
Well, speaking of paddling, today was a pretty mild day. It may not have been that cold outside, but we here at News Center 16 enjoyed a nice bowl of chili to keep warm. How's tonight looking, Cindy?
Well, it's not going to be super cold. We won't necessarily need that bowl of chili to keep us warm, but it was definitely yummy today. We had a charity event to help raise money for a local family. Here's a look at how things are. It was actually nice. Definitely not chili eating weather because we were well above normal in the 50s across Michiana. We got up to at least 54 here in South Bend. It's down to 45 now in St. Joe, 44 in Shipshewana. We are kind of in a break between clouds right now, so we've been seeing that nice sunshine late this afternoon, but those clouds are starting to roll back in, and that will slow those temperatures from falling down too much as we get into later this evening. As we take a look at our forecast, we do expect those temperatures to fall through the 40s this evening, but then sort of steady out a little bit more by later on this evening as those clouds continue to increase. We'll have a look at the rest of your Storm Team 16 forecast coming up in just a few minutes. Maureen.
Thanks, Cindy. Take a look at this. You're taking a live look at Chicago. Since noon, hundreds of protesters have flocked to the streets demanding Mayor Rahm Emanuel step down as mayor. The citywide walkout started downtown at Daley Plaza and has scattered throughout the city. Protests sparked after Emanuel apologized for the 2014 shooting death of Laquan McDonald, killed by Officer Jason Van Dyke, who has been charged with first-degree murder.
I am the mayor. As I said the other day, I own it. I take responsibility for what happened because it happened on my watch. And if we're going to fix it, I want you to understand it's my responsibility with you. But if we're also going to begin the healing process, the first step in that journey is my step. And I'm sorry.
Protests have remained peaceful for the most part, chanting "Hands up, don't shoot" and carrying signs with hashtag Resign Rahm. But there were some clashes with police. Some protesters sat on cars and even blocked traffic, making it a commute nightmare for drivers in the South Loop. Meantime, in response to the McDonald shooting, Emanuel has appointed a task force to make recommendations about police department reforms. The Department of Justice has also launched a far-reaching civil rights investigation. Can universities use race as a factor in choosing a more diverse student body, or is it a different form of discrimination? Those were the arguments raised today in a case making its second appearance before the U.S. Supreme Court. And based on today's hearing, civil rights activists are concerned the justices might be ready to reverse an affirmative standard in place for a dozen years. Brian Moore has the story.
With the future of affirmative action on the line, the Supreme Court heard the case of a woman who claims she wasn't admitted to the University of Texas because she's white.
Like most Americans, I don't believe that students should be treated differently based on their race.
But the university argued it considers race narrowly, one in a number of factors.
Diversity fosters an understanding of one another, of our students, and with respect for their differences.
It's actually the second time the High Court has considered Abigail Fisher's case. Back in 2013, the justices sent the case back to an appeals court for further consideration. In 90 minutes of argument today, the court's conservative wing expressed skepticism of the need for affirmative action in modern college admissions. That's a troubling sign for civil rights activists.
I didn't know if I was in the courtroom at the United States Supreme Court or at a Donald Trump rally.
Justice Anthony Kennedy, likely the pivotal vote in this case, suggested several times the court needs more information. That raises the possibility this long-running, potentially landmark case may be headed back for another hearing. Brian Moore, NBC News, Washington.
There's also the possibility of a 4-4 tie vote. Justice Elena Kagan recused herself from this case because she worked on it during her time in the Justice Department. Well, new developments tonight on the two San Bernardino shooters. FBI Director James Comey says the suspects were radicalized long before they began dating online. Comey spoke before the Senate Judiciary Committee today. He added investigators believe Syed Farouk and his wife Tashfeen Malik were radicalized at least 2 years ago. They also believe she held extremist views before coming to the U.S.
It looks like she was. So far, the data we've collected, the intelligence indicates that she was before she connected with the other killer and came here.
Comey describes the shooters as an example of homegrown terrorists and says they were inspired by a foreign terrorist organization. Meanwhile, President Obama joined members of Congress to mark the 150th anniversary of the 13th Amendment. The constitutional amendment abolished slavery in America. Several members of Congress spoke at the ceremony. When President Obama addressed the audience, he talked about the significance of the constitutional amendment and the work done by civil rights leaders in the century that followed.
President Lincoln understood that if we were ever to fully realize that founding promise, it meant not just signing an Emancipation Proclamation, not just winning a war. It meant making the most powerful collective statement we can in our democracy, etching our values into our Constitution.
But President Obama drew his loudest applause when he took an indirect jab at Donald Trump. The president said freedom is for all Americans, no matter their religion. Well, still ahead, a world's first new medical technology is looking to erase a horrible inherited disease in dogs. You're not going to want to miss this. We'll take a look just before 6.
Tracking inconvenient weather where you live. Storm Team 16 is your weather authority.
Wow, what a nice day across Michiana. We had some nice sunshine this afternoon, temperatures in the 50s. Normally, we're seeing 37 for a high this time of the year. Some clouds are starting to roll in, but it is a beautiful sunset as we take a live look over the Notre Dame campus and the Golden Dome. 71 degrees is our 71% relative humidity with winds out of the southwest at 8 miles per hour. Temperatures are starting to fall. We're getting down through the 40s at this point. Some folks still in the 50s, the lower 50s at this point. 48 in Warsaw. We're down to 42 in Shipshewana. As we take a look then at 16 Doppler max, absolutely nothing going on. It's expected to stay that way tonight and, well, honestly through tomorrow as well. Clouds are starting to roll back in, and that'll slow down that temperature fall that we are seeing early this evening. Here's then a look at the bigger picture of 16 Future Track, and as we start you off at 7 o'clock, again, we're just going to see those clouds starting to roll back in from the west. And what's going to happen for tomorrow is we'll start off with maybe a few clouds, but we are expecting to see at least partly cloudy skies through much of the day, and especially by late in the day, probably mostly sunny at times. Well, we're going to be in the warm sector. It's going to be very warm tomorrow. We're looking at upper 50s. That's almost 20 degrees above normal. A cold front will come through for Thursday night, but it'll come through dry because all of the moisture is still well to the north. It'll only cool us down a few degrees for Friday, still way warm for this time of the year. Then things start getting interesting. Friday night, we have a small chance for some rain. It's not going to be a huge widespread thing. It doesn't look like, at least at this point. However, this whole frontal system is going to kind of stall to our west, and eventually it's going to pick up a lot of Gulf moisture, and that's going to mean a fairly wet weekend across Michiana, especially the latter half of it. Here's your forecast for tonight. 38 degrees. It wouldn't be mine, it was 68 degrees, but wrong season, huh? Mild with increasing clouds tonight with a low in the upper 30s to around 40 degrees. Then tomorrow we're looking at 58 degrees, breezy and warmer with, for the most part, partly cloudy skies. 55 on Friday. Most of the day absolutely beautiful. Some showers coming in as we get into Friday evening, at least in spots. Then Saturday, 61. How about that? We do have a chance for some showers. Better chances as we get into Saturday night, and then especially Sunday and Monday. 61 again on Sunday, and then it turns back into the 40s, but still above normal for this time of the year. So, boy, this is a very mild start to December.
And pretty nice. I know a lot of people, though, are hoping that we have a white Christmas. There's still a little time, right?
It will cool down some next week, and I actually have a few chances for snow in the 16-day forecast.
Okay, Cindy, thanks a lot. Well, coming up, Chipotle is in a hot spot, especially among college kids who love to indulge in a burrito bowl from time to time. But now, your beloved restaurant is facing some heat after leaving several students in Boston sick.
I know that we have statutory requirements that every restaurant is required to attain, and they failed in these 3 items.
We'll take a look at the cause behind the growing outbreak next. Topping consumer headlines, things seem to be getting worse for Chipotle. Officials at Boston College say the number of sick students is growing from 30 on Monday to 80 today. All of them falling ill after eating at a nearby Chipotle restaurant. The cause? Initial testing suggests the norovirus, which can cause stomach pain, fever, and vomiting. The virus is highly contagious and can spread by surface contact or from eating contaminated food. Boston health officials have cited this particular restaurant with multiple violations, including keeping meat at incorrect temperatures and allowing a sick employee to come to work.
I am upset that any establishment would allow somebody to be in the facility who was sick and did not follow protocol.
The fast food chain is still reeling from a nationwide E. coli outbreak. There are no related cases of E. coli in Massachusetts, but 47 people have been affected in at least 6 other states. The recent health scares have sent Chipotle shares tumbling down nearly 19% this year. Believe it or not, more than 1 in 5 Americans is expected to die in debt. The number of Americans with no debt is growing, but so is the number of Americans with a heavy debt load who say they'll never get out. According to a study released today by creditcards.com, 21% say they will never pay off all their debt. That's up slightly from 18% last year and sharply from just 9% in 2013. Among those in debt, about half say they'll remain in debt until the age of 61 or older. On the flip side, the study also found 22% of Americans say they don't have any debt at all. And here now are 16 stocks of local interest. Some very special babies were born recently at Cornell University that have the potential to help prevent diseases. NBC's Erica Edwards explains.
Behold the world's first litter of puppies born through in vitro fertilization. Cornell University's Dr. Alexander Travis beams like a proud father when recalling the day the 7 pups were born 5 months ago.
Very nerve-wracking until you heard those first cries and saw them wriggling around, and then it was really great.
It was a moment scientists had been trying to get to for 40 years. That's because, without getting too heavy into the science behind the birds and bees of dogs, reproduction is much more complicated in canines than it is in other mammals.
Yes, I like you too.
So why do we care about the world's first litter of IVF puppies? Besides the fact that they're just so cute, The technology opens the door to ways of preventing hereditary diseases like cancer in certain breeds.
In vitro fertilization itself can't help prevent disease, but what it does is it gives us a way to generate embryos, and then we can use new technologies to hopefully go in and fix certain genes that cause those diseases.
Instead of treating genetic diseases in dogs, these doctors someday may be able to prevent them. But first, the basics.
Sit. Sit.
Erica Edwards, NBC News.
The IVF technology developed at Cornell also has implications for endangered species. Scientists can freeze and store semen and eggs of rare canine breeds and then reintroduce that genetic material into the gene pool. Well, coming up, when all else fails, dance. A pooch in need of some attention found the perfect way to get some. We'll take a look right after this. One pup may have been trying to get its owner's attention, and if licking hands and barking doesn't work, you can always give dancing a try. Check this out. This dog has some fire moves. While licking its owner's hands, the dog busts out salsa dancing, and this pup is pretty impressive. The dog uses its two front legs to keep balance while doing a pitter-patter with its rear legs, and it doesn't miss a beat. It's safe to say we can all learn a thing or two from this grooving pet. We see a lot of cute ones, but that has got to take it.
It looks like a toy, like the way he's just,
Very cute.
Oh my goodness.
That's a happy story. How about the weather?
Oh, the weather's actually kind of happy too.
Good.
I mean, if you're liking these warm temperatures, we got a lot more of those coming over the next several days. Beautiful tomorrow, upper 50s and dry, and then it looks like rain will start as we get into Friday night and especially later in the weekend.
Okay, our 90 minutes of news continues next when Terry rejoins us. Here's a preview.